Hi, second graders. So last class, you might remember us talking about width and length, and today we're going to talk a bit more about measurement. So first of all, let's get us started. What is the long side of a rectangle called?
That would be length.
Correct. And what about the short side of a rectangle? What is that called?
I think it's called width.
Yeah, good job, Nicole. Okay, so earlier in class, I passed out a rectangle that should look like this and also a ruler. So in a group, I want you guys to take a minute and try to find out the width and the length of this rectangle. Okay, now let's see if your answers are correct. So remember, we want to get the edge of it aligned with the ruler. So you can see here. So that's going to be the length because that is our long side. And now we're going to measure the short side. So remember, line it up. There you go.
Okay, class. So today we're going to go over the vocabulary. And remember last week we did discuss a little bit, so it's just going to be a review. So remember, measurement is a number that shows the size or the amount of something. And the length is how long an object is. The width is the distance of a side of an object. And then we have our tools. So on the ruler, we have the inches and the centimeters, and they're used to measure smaller objects. And then we have the meters and the yards, and they are used to measure big lengths or distances. And then when we measure foot, we use our tape measure, and that's to do short distances. And we can also do height, so like how tall someone is. And we have our measurement anchor chart. Can anyone remember how to measure something?
You line it up with the tool.
Correct. So when you get the tool that you use, whether it's a ruler, a meter stick or a yardstick, or the tape measure, you line it up. You want to place the item at a 0. For instance, if we were going to use the book, we will make sure that the 0's right here, and we want to go from the 0 to the end of that book. So next we're going to do a measuring activity. We're going to break up into groups of 3. So the first group, I want you to get your rulers and your math textbook, and I want you to measure the math textbook for me. The second group, I would like you to get up and you take the yardstick, and I want you to go measure the cubbies. And remember, we want to go from end to end. In the third group, we're going to measure the front door with your meter stick. So since the front door goes vertical, you're going to measure from top to bottom. And for group 4, I want you to measure the classroom, and you're going to use the measuring tape. So you're going to walk from one end of the classroom to the other end of the classroom using your measuring tape. Okay, so now that we have went and we did our separate measurements, I want us to all take a look and compare what we get. So group 1 with the textbook, they found out that the length of the math book was 9.25 inches. And they also found out that the book was 8 inches wide. For group 2, they measured the cubbies. Using the yardstick, they found out that the length of the cubbies was 4 yards and that the width of the cubbies were 2 yards. And for group 3, they measured the front door. They noticed that the length of the front door was 2 meters and 5 inches, and that the width of the door was 36 inches. And for group 4, they measured the classroom. They noticed that the length of the classroom was 7 meters, and the width of the classroom was 5 meters. So why do we use different measuring tools? Can anyone tell me why they think we use different measuring tools?
Do we use different measuring tools to measure different size items and use different measurements?
That is correct.
Okay, friends, now that we've discussed the different tools and what we use to measure them, I want you to turn to a partner, mostly preferred your right partner, and I want you to talk about these questions. So for number one, if I want to buy a rug for a classroom and I want to determine how big I would need it to be, what tool would I use? Number two, if I wanted to determine the length of the classroom from the whiteboard to the back of the classroom, what tool might I use? And number three, a friend and I would like to compare the length of our pencils. What tool might we use to see which one of us has the smaller pencil? So I'll give you a quick minute or two to discuss this with your partner, and then we'll come back and talk about these questions. Okay, so does anybody want to answer number one for us? What tool would we use to determine how big of a rug we might need for our classroom?
Well, when I was talking to my partners, I thought that maybe we can use a tape measure, but we also could use a yardstick.
And why do you think that, Nicole?
So I feel like the tape measure might be easy because it measures long distances, whereas also the yardstick, it measures long distances also, and I wouldn't have to use it that many times.
Great job. What about number two? Do we have a volunteer to answer number two for us?
I can go again.
Okay, Nicole.
So if I wanted to determine the length of the classroom from the whiteboard, I would also use a tape measure. It works in long lengths. It measures long lengths.
Great job. And what about number three? If a friend and I wanted to compare our pencil sizes, what tool might we use?
I would use, I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand. I would use my ruler because the ruler is much smaller and it would be easy to measure the pencil with. And it measures in inches and in centimeters.
Fantastic job, friends. It's so clear that we understand how to use the different tools and how they might benefit us when we're measuring different items in our classroom. So let's move on. So next class, we're actually going to use our friendly tools that we discussed today in class by learning how to first estimate our length and width of different items, and also using our tools to check our measurements. So for example, if I wanted to measure the length of a desk, I might look at it and say, oh, I think it might be 2 yards long. Then I can use my yardstick to determine if my estimation is correct. Are there any questions about anything we discussed today?
No.
Great job. Okay, well, I'll see you guys next class. Bye.
Bye.